Civil service is basically an examination which is meant for mediocres. It's not meant for the brilliant students. No. Absolutely no. What do you mean by professional approach? So to begin with, when you start your preparation, the first thing that you should do is you need to figure it out. What you have to figure it out? Earlier our concept is what to read. Now the concept is, so what is international relations? How the boundary has evolved? What are the different types of boundaries? Any boundary issue, the problems will be with respect to the truth which is true in nature. The truest truth. What is the truest truth? Frederick Ratzel, a great thinker. He is the first one to introduce the concept of organic theory of state. What is this organic theory of state? See, this civil service examination is basically an examination. I'll give a bit of my experience with the students. Of course, this is 2026, isn't it? So I have been interacting with the students like you since 1996. Okay? Probably you are not born when I was teaching, right? That's the time when I entered into the services, and from then onwards I have been teaching here, right? From 1996 onwards, 30 years, right? So with my little bit of experience, I'll tell you one thing. Civil service is basically an examination which is meant for mediocres. It's not meant for the brilliant students. No. Absolutely no. It's not like CAT or JE. What we require is basically average capabilities. But one thing that is most important is you require perseverance, consistency. Perseverance, consistency, and a very high level of dedication, determination. That's most important. So generally what I find is, here what you want is, earlier people used to say civil service means it's a test of nerves, basically. Yes, it's a test of nerves. It's not a system of hard work. What you require now is, what you require? Do you require hard work here? No. What do you require? Smart work. That's true. You are smart enough to identify the actual one, right? So what you require is smart work. The question is, what is smart? That it. See, as you pretty well know, our examination is basically having an open-ended syllabus, unlike other exams. And even the questions that are asked also, generally anything under the sun can be asked. You can't collar the examiner saying that why you have given this is out of syllabus, this is inside the syllabus. There is nothing like inside, outside here, right? This is just like JEE advanced exam, right? So here what we require is a smart work. Smart work in the sense, first you should know what is the demand of the exam. And you should have a professional approach to the preparation. Not general raw variety of thing. What do you mean by professional approach? So to begin with, when you start your preparation, the first thing that you should do is, what you should do? Look into the syllabus first. That is the beginning. That's why I asked you, are you aware of the syllabus first? I think, are you aware that today some IR module is going to happen? So any serious student who is entering into the classroom with the understanding that the IR module is going to start here would do what? Look into the syllabus first. What is the syllabus? Right? That is the beginning. So if you have done it, probably you are on the right track. If you have not done it, not on the right track. Because this is an examination where you should identify and acknowledge your weakness first. Many times it appears a bit harsh, but medicine is always bitter, isn't it? You cannot have a sweet medicine. No. Your treatment cannot be sweeter. Your surgery is always painful, isn't it? So that you will get a better result at the end. So let us be very frank and honest here. the first thing you should have done is you should go through the syllabus, number one. Then what else you should know? After that, what questions were asked in the earlier examination? That is the second important one. So previous year's questions. So these are the two important things. If you start your preparation with this, then your approach is professional. Then you are smart work. Otherwise, you just come, sit in the class, some teacher will vomit something here, you collect that vomiting. No. That's not the way things should move. Absolutely. No. And even in the classroom also, you should be smart enough. Smart in the sense what? You must be in a position to write your classwork. Should not depend on any other notes. You should have your own notes. Whatever the things are being taught here, you must be in a position to write down. Note down the important points. So that your classwork always reflects your understanding. And many a times when a student comes, isn't it? So when they talk, what I always say is, you bring your classwork, I will say. What they have written in the classwork will reflect your level of understanding. Where exactly you stand. That gives a pointer that identifies, so what is your stuff, the level of stuff you have. So your classwork is a reflection of your state of mind in the classroom. That's important. Then the third important one is, when you look into the material, guides, this, that, etc. Of course, when we were writing our examination, there was a dearth of material. Information. Information was a scarce in nature. But nowadays, you have information explosion. There is a heap of explosion. You need to figure it out. What do you have to figure it out? Earlier, our concept is what to read. Now the concept is what not to read. That is more important. So first you should know what you should not read. Not just stop by understanding what to read. Because if you don't know what not to read, that is, if you don't discriminate, then probably you will be lost, though you are a good student. That's going to be a big issue there. Right? So these are all certain fundamentals we are talking about. Anyway, keep this aside with this small intro. Right? Try to understand what I am suggesting here. Because these are the things which we will not be discussing in our classes further. But the beginning is always very important, because we are trying to give a direction, every important thing. So what I expect all of you is, you must be smart students. And you should have professional approach. Not the just run-of-the-mill type of things here. That's it. We find so many students here. I am not just frightening you, but you should know the truth. When I walk in this street here, I find students who are there in the classes in 98, 99, 2000, still here only. They still loiter here only, in the coffee shops, tea shops here and there. But there are others who are there on the other side. Right? So what is the difference between them and others? That's what we mean by success and failure. The line that separates success and failure is very thin. That it. And it is blurring in nature. That it. All students who are successful are not brilliant, you cannot say. And all those who are not successful you cannot say that they are not brilliant. No. The gap between them is very thin. And many a times a large number of students who are equally hardworking and who are equally competent, but still they are left out of the race. They are just there. There is a vast difference. Why these are left out? Of course, I do acknowledge there is always a factor of luck, but you cannot attribute everything to luck always. Luck always plays a role somewhere around 10 to 15%. You can't just accuse that 10 to 15% component always. What about the 85% that is there? No, we conveniently ignore. Because whenever we fail, we always look for excuses. Try to clip the blame on someone else. Generally, the students blame whom when they don't succeed? They blame the institute. They blame the teacher. Of course, they blame the parents. That it. They try to find out. But conveniently ignoring your role of 85%. That's very, very important here. So most of the students more or less same here. But many a times why somebody is there on the other side of the fence, why somebody is there on this side of the fence, the difference is in their approach. The way they worked. Their approach and their work, the way of approach is very, very, very important. That's why I say smart work, professional approach is crucial. So hope you got the point, right? So next time onwards, not only for this module, what I am suggesting is it's equally good for all modules. That is. So you must have a professional approach. So for next class onwards, so I should find the faces which are confident in nature. Saying that when you get the confidence, when you come with preparation, when you know something about it, then you feel confident. Because nowadays in the society, we are in a knowledge society, right? Knowledge is power. It's not your bank balance that's important. No. It's not the vehicle you are coming in. It's not the dress you are wearing in. No. Ultimately, in the 21st century, what is determining the things? Knowledge. Knowledge is power. If you have knowledge, you are always preferred. You are respected. You are through. Otherwise, no. So, keep this in mind here. Then coming to the international relations, the IR topic we are talking about. This syllabus has, I think, some 4 or 5 topics are there in it. So, what exactly is there? I think somebody can read out, or I will try to recollect. So, we have things like India and its neighborhood. So, a relationship for India with its neighborhood. Neighborhood in the sense what? So, who are there in our neighbors? Like say, for example, if you are staying in a room or in a hostel or in a house, yeah, there are some neighbors for you, right? So, like that, who are the neighbors for India? And what relationship we have with the neighbors? That's number one. Then another important thing is we have some of the regional or bilateral groupings in which India is a part of it. So there are a large number of groups in which India is a part. Things like we have SARC is there, isn't it? Small one, immediate neighborhood. Or otherwise things like the BIMSTEC is there, or the ACO is there. There are so many groups are there. India is a part of certain regional groupings or bilateral groupings. That is the second important one. And the third important one is some international institutions which are connected to it. There are big international institutions starting with United Nations, right? Starting with United Nations. And so many other groupings are there. Certain groupings are basically meant for economy, or certain others are basically military groupings are there. So how they shape the international relations, that's the third important one. Then we have the fourth important one, the things like so these international institutions, the economic institutions like World Bank is there, IMF is there, right? Or the military groupings are there, like NATO is there, right? So what is their influence and how they are doing? That is the third important one. And the next important one is the whole world is generally divided into 2 parts now. Developing world and a developed world. We divide the world into 2 groups. Generally, if you take in a geographical context, you divide the globe or the world into northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere, eastern hemisphere, western hemisphere. Or you have the earlier world concept of western world and eastern world. The western world called as the occidental rim, the eastern world called as the oriental rim, right? So the eastern world, western world, or western culture, eastern culture. But that's the old concept. But in the context of the political relations, international relations, right? We divide the world into 2 groups. That is the developed world, developing world. And these are not watertight compartments. That is. These are all our concept. It's not that somebody has drawn a line as such. So generally developed world means those who are economically developed, socially developed. What do you mean by development? Development means social development, economic development. So who are socially and economically in a very well advanced stage. Say for example, you have Northern America, that is like USA, Canada. Or otherwise you have the European countries, particularly the Western European countries, that most of that G7 lot we are talking about, the UK, France, Germany, right? Or otherwise from the Asian continent, it is like Japan, which is also a developed country, right? And all others are generally called as a developing countries. Earlier we were labeled as a third world countries, and now you don't have that concept of third world, right? Earlier you have two world, three worlds are there. What are those three worlds? One world led by USA, that is the NATO group, and second one is led by the earlier, the former Soviet Union, Russian led or the Soviet Union led group, and third world is the one which is not connected to these two groups. That was earlier concept. But now the present concept is developed countries and developing countries. So developing countries means mostly Afro-Asian and Latin American countries. That is the whole of the Africa, Asia, and the Latin America, that is Central America and Southern American region, right? Of course, in Asia, the exception is Japan. Japan belongs to the developed world, right? So these developed countries and developing countries, what are their policies and how they influence our relationship? That's it. And the most important one is the Indian diaspora. Indian diaspora. That means the Indians who are living elsewhere in the rest of the world, who migrated to different parts of the world. That's it. So mobility of the Indians is also very, very high. We find Indians all over the world, but they are highly concentrated in certain policies. And some of them are like NRIs, non-resident Indians, right? They are Indians, but they are staying there. There are others who are called as PAOs, persons of Indian origin. That means they are not Indian citizens, but they belong to India. That means culturally. That means their earlier generations went there, they settled there long back. But they still have their roots connected to the country, right? They are connected to the country. So this is what we call it as a diaspora. The Indian immigrants who are settled in different parts of the world, and how they are shaping this is another important. So these are the 5 important topics, the subtopics that you have there, right? So then these 5 things we need to discuss, right? One by one, all things. But before we get into a full-fledged discussion on all these different 5 modules, etc., then another important aspect is here what we are talking about is basically international relations means what? International relations means for every country there are 2 types of relations. One is internal and another one is international. So that is within the country, internal we talk about. And our relationship with other countries, that is what called as external affairs. So internal affairs, external affairs. External affairs is also called as the foreign affairs. We call it as Ministry of Foreign Affairs, right? Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So generally every country has its own relationship with other countries. So these international relations are the relationship you have with other countries. Generally there is a policy. That's what we call it as the foreign policy. Policy of external affairs are the foreign policy, right? So our whole topic revolves around what? It revolves around the foreign policy. Because ultimately these 5 subtopics we have identified, what you will be discussing there, how these things are determining the foreign policy of the country, and what is exactly happening to the foreign policy of the country. So every country will have its own foreign policy, right? So for it, you need to understand what is this country, concept of country first. What do you mean by country? See, normally when you are in Hyderabad, then you say from where you are. Somebody asks you from where you are, then what will you say? What will you say? You refer to the district from which you are hailing, the village you are hailing, or the state you are hailing. Get it? If you are away in some other state, you say, I am from AP, I am from Telangana, right? Otherwise, you say, I am from South India. Is it? When you go out of the country, then you say, your sub-identity is lost. Get it? There you will say, I am from India. Get it? I am from India. The moment you cross your borders, international borders, then your identity is with respect to your country. This concept of country. But when this concept of country has come, what is a country? What do you mean by a country? Country is a political unit. What is a country? It is a political unit. Basically, it is a geographical area. It is a geographical unit. Do you have any country without geographical area? Can you imagine a country without geographical area? No. A country means it has certain geographical area. It occupies a certain space on the earth surface, both land as well as water. Right? That is what you call it as a country. So basically, country means it is a geographical unit. It occupies a certain space, geographical space. And this geographical space is identified, it is delineated. You say, for example, this is the world map. In this world map, you say this is a country. What do you mean? When you say this is in the world map, you are saying that this is one country. That's encircled. That means you are delineating a part of the area. You are delineating a part of the area and saying that it is a country. On what basis you delineate? On what basis you delineate? So what is this? What is this? What is this? Asia. Eurasia. It is Eurasia, Europe and Asia. Of course, we divide it into two continents, European continent and Asian continent. Strictly speaking, Europe is not a continent. However, it is. It is not separated. North America, okay, separated. South America, separate. Africa, separate. Australia, separate. But Europe and Asia are not separated. They form a continuous geographical area. But still, we call it as Europe, separate continent, and Asia, separate continent. If I ask you, come on, draw the boundary between Europe and Asia, then you have to think twice, right? This is basically the Eurasian landmass. In this Eurasian landmass, you say your country is India, right? Where is India? You have to draw a line. So this geographical mass, this is the world land area you are talking about. In this world land area, you are drawing some lines. That means you are delineating, you are fixing boundaries and calling them as countries. So you say this is India, right? So you have drawn a line and say this is India, right? Now you say this India is a country. That's what we are, right? And on what basis you have drawn these lines and say this is a country? What is the definition? There must be some criteria. Why don't you draw a line here and say this is India? Can you say this is India? Will you say? No. You say this is only India. Why? And you say this is a political unit. What do you mean by a political unit? A political unit is a geographical area. And that geographical area is the one within which there is a political power which exercises authority, which is a sovereign political power. You call it as a sovereign political power. And that sovereign political power makes the laws or the rules, how the thing should move. And all the rules that are made or the laws that are made by that sovereign political power, they are applicable to the boundaries of this country. Say for example, India. So for India, who makes laws? Parliament of India, right? That is sovereign in nature. And whatever the act that is made by the Parliament is applicable up to where? Up to the boundaries of India, isn't it? Can you say the Parliament that is located in Delhi makes a law? Is it applicable to this area? No. This is applicable to up to here only. Isn't it? So this political unit has one important characteristic feature. What is this one? It has a sovereignty. So a country is basically a political unit which is governed by a sovereign political power. Isn't it? Governed by sovereign political power. And now the whole world is divided into such countries. Isn't it? Now we have around 190 odd countries are there, which are recognized as countries. But this concept of country, in political sciences, it is basically called as a state. We call it as a state, not as a country. They are called as states. But of course, our understanding of state is different. For us, state means Telangana, AP, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, they are states, right? No, don't mislead. This state is basically a province, which is a part of the country. Which is a part of the country. So, but at the global level, international level, we call it as states. And there is another important concept called as a nation. The state of India, United States of America, right? Or you say nation, Indian nation. So what is nation and what is state? I am just trying to find out some basic terminology that you need to understand, because in due course of our discussion, we will be referring to these things again and again. So then you have the concept of a nation. What is a nation? So is India a nation? Yes. So then what do you mean by nation and what do you mean by a state? Yes, somebody, yes. It is a political aspect, right? Nation is an aspect of social aspect, yes. Mm-hmm. Sense of similarities between people, yes. Anyone else? Assuming self-authority. Okay, then? It is a cultural boundary. Good, cultural boundary, right? See, generally, a nation means it is a feeling, understanding, which is a mental construct. Concept of state is a political construct. It is a definite in nature. You say Indian state, what are the boundaries? Fixed. You can't say I will change the boundaries. No, somebody else will be aggrieved, right? There are fixed boundaries for it. That is a state. But whereas nation is the feeling or understanding, is that it? Or the mental construct of the people who are living in it. So somebody who is living here, that it? His concept of nation we don't know. So he may think that his nation is only this. That problem is there. Sometimes people who are living in a state may think that only a part of that state or country is their nation. And sometimes people living in this state may think that the area that is located here also belongs to them, and their concept of nation is much beyond it. That is also there. So this is the bigger issue, because these are the ones which always lead to conflicts. They lead to conflicts. Say, for example, somebody who is living in Israel now, he thinks that there are areas which are located in Syria, Jordan, Egypt, they also belong to them. Their concept of the Israeli nation is entirely different, slightly much bigger. And even in India also, somebody may think that, okay, so the concept of India, Indian nation, isn't it? It may extend right up to Afghanistan. Isn't it? It may extend beyond the political boundaries. That means your cultural, somebody is saying cultural, yes, your cultural affinity, social affinity, you are seeing that they are our people. That land also belongs to us. We are all the same. This unifying factor, this nation is there. But as long as the nation and state boundaries are coterminous, then there will not be any problem. So the ideal thing is, boundary of a nation and boundary of a state should be coterminous in nature. They should be the same. Then you have the concept of a nation state. Nation state concept. This nation state concept is a modern concept. Earlier you don't have this concept, and particularly this concept has evolved after the Second World War. These are the what call it as the modern states, the present day countries. The country as we understand today, they are basically nation states. Those who are living within them, their concept of nation extends up to the political boundary. If the people who are living in the country, if their concept of nation extends up to the political boundary, then generally they are stable in nature. If that is not the case, then there will be a problem. That's it. Say, for example, we have certain states which are multi-nations in nature. Multinational state is a big thing. What do you mean by a multinational state? Multinational state. What is a multinational state? In one state, there are more than one nation is there. Say, for example, assume somebody who is living in certain parts of Tamil Nadu, they think that for them, Tamil Nadu is the nation. Somebody is living in West Bengal, etc. They think. Northeastern India, they think that their concept of their thing is only, their affinity, everything is connected to that. That's it. Then there are large number of nations are there within India, for example. Then it is a multinational state. If it is a multinational state, then it is a strong recipe for disintegration, cessation. That results in cessation. Because everybody will try to assert their cultural identity and they want to get the political things. So somebody says that I want this to be a separate country for me. Everybody wants to be a separate country, right? So this concept of what you call it as multinational states is a dangerous one. If any country is a multinational state, it is bound to disintegrate in the longer run. Say, for example, the Soviet Union disintegrated. There may be 100 reasons why the Soviet Union disintegrated. But one basic reason why the Soviet Union disintegrated is it was not a nation state. It was a multinational state. That is the problem. That's it. But there is the other way around. What is the other way around? Your nation is bigger than the state. Then what will happen? If the people living in a country think that their concept of nation extends beyond the political boundaries, then that results in expansionism. Such states tend to be expansionist in nature. They try to expand beyond their boundaries. That's it. So both these multinational concept or otherwise the concept of nation extending beyond the state, in both the cases, it results in conflicts. It results in issues. It results in disturbances all over the world. The conflicts may be social, cultural, economic. They may be military conflicts as well, finally. And all these conflicts will finally determine the international relationship of all the countries, the foreign policies. That's it. So your foreign policy, your relationship with other countries depends on what? Whether you are a multinational state or not, or you are a nation state. So now the question is, what is India? Is India a multinational state? Where do we stand? That's it. We say India is a nation state. India is a nation state. Neither there is a secessionism in the country, nor we are expansionist in nature. Do you have the idea of expansion? Saying that India bounds extends beyond these things. Sri Lanka belongs to us, Pakistan belongs to us, Afghanistan belongs to us. Then the way you behave, the way you conduct your relationship is entirely different. That's it. So now Israel behaves in a particular way because its concept of nation extends beyond its state. So if you need to understand the behavior of Israel, you need to understand the reasons behind it. So politically, the unit itself is not stabilized in nature. That's it. It's not an ancient political unit newly brought into existence. So So now who are there, whether it is the political institution or the people who are there, they think that their country, that means their nation concept is beyond the political boundary. So they bound to expand. Say for example, China is there. Their relationship with Hong Kong is different. Their relationship with Taiwan is different. Why? Because for Chinese nation, Taiwan is a part of China. They don't accept the two-state theory. They don't accept the two-state theory or two-nation theory, they say. Because their concept of China is extending right into Taiwan. And it extends right into South China Sea, certain other parts. Not only land, it may be maritime also. So that is one of the basic reason for conflicts. Basic reason for conflicts. Now Russia thinks that Crimea is its part. The Crimean region. It has already annexed recently. And now it is looking towards Ukraine. So what Ukraine says? It says that, okay, Eastern Ukraine is basically part of Russia, they say. Why this is? Because a large number of them are Russian-speaking population is there in the Eastern Ukraine. And both belong to the Slav ethnicity. So there are ethnic relationships are there. Linguistic relationships are there. Very strong cultural, historical relationships are there. So those who are living in Moscow, they think that territory that is there in the Donbass region belongs to essentially Russia. Because their concept of Russian nation extends beyond the present day political boundary. So they think that it is their legitimate right to get hold of a large part of the Ukraine. Don't think that the only Putin has done it. No. Whether it is Putin here, Modi here, Trump there, they are all simple players on the drama that is going on stage, play. Everybody will come and play their role and go at some point of time, that's all. But ultimately the system is important. Because everybody, you cannot act against your system. Ultimately, individuals do count. Right? So that's why you have the concept of nation, concept of state, nation, state. Then another important concept is one state and another state is divided by, separated by what? Boundaries. These are very, very important. When you talk about the international relations, foreign affairs, external affairs, all what you are talking about, discussing these things here. For them, what is the flashpoint? Flashpoint is the boundaries. Boundaries are the most happening geographical areas on the earth surface now. They are the most happening places on the earth now. All conflicts emerge where? Boundaries. So you should have some understanding of a boundary. What is a boundary? How the boundary has evolved? What are the different types of boundaries? Some general understanding is crucial. Certain boundaries are evolved over a period of time. Certain boundaries suddenly come into existence. Say for example, the boundary between India and Pakistan, has it evolved over a period of time? Is it? India-Pakistan boundary has evolved over 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. When it has come in? August 14, 1947. That is the time when that boundary has come into existence all of a sudden. Earlier it was not there. What is the basis that is different? It is basically a cultural boundary, a religious boundary. So what is the basis for partition of India and Pakistan? Based on religion. That's all. It's a cultural boundary. Then there are different types of boundaries are there. In certain cases, the boundaries are basically geographical features, right? Sometimes mountains separate the boundaries. Mountain ranges separate the boundaries. Isn't it? Yes. Can you give one or two examples of mountain ranges? Nepal, Bhutan. What is the mountain that is separating? Say for example, India, China. What is the boundary separating them? The Himalayan ranges. India, Nepal. Isn't it? Or Nepal, Himalaya, Nepal and China. Or otherwise you go to the things like the France and Spain, the Pyrenees Mountains. Or otherwise you go to South America, Andes mountain ranges. All over the world today you take the atlas and find out where the mountain ranges separate the countries. Which mountain range is separating which countries. Identify them. They are basically physiographic boundaries. Mountain ranges separating. And in some cases, the rivers separate the boundaries. They function as boundaries. That it. Can you give an example where a river separating one country and another country? River separating a boundary, forming a boundary. India? India, Pakistan. So if you take the international boundary, today you do one thing. Right? So here you have the international boundary. This is basically a river. Today identify this river. Is it Indus? I am not saying this, that. Have you ever looked into Atlas? So first thing is, there are many things we always take them for granted. When you look into them means what? Bend your head and bend your back. Two things. Only bending the head and back. Then only you will understand the things. So today open the atlas, open the map and see which boundary is separating. Not only here, even in Southeast Asia, Thailand, say for example, there also a river, very big rivers are there, like river Mekong, which separates them. So identify the rivers. In some cases, the rivers which separate the function as boundaries. Right? Then in some cases, some marshy areas separate they form the boundary. Can you give an example of marshy area? Yes? Yes. So here you have the India-Pakistan boundary. Yeah. That is basically the Ran of Kutch in that Sarkris area. That's a marshy region which separates. Like that, even in Soviet Russia also, the things like the Pripyat marshes are there. They separate. So different physiographic boundaries. Right? So then there are certain other boundaries which are neither physiographic in nature nor they are cultural in nature. Isn't it? But they are superimposed. There is no basis. There is no criteria. Just they are drawn. How they are drawn? Have you ever looked into the Africa map? Africa, for example. Isn't it? You find some countries like this. Have you ever seen? Straight lines. How they have come into existence? Are they physiographic? Are they cultural? Physiographic and cultural cannot be like that. They are geometric boundaries. They are straight lines following latitudes, longitudes. They are superimposed. They are drawn by the colonial rulers. They are not evolved. Isn't it? So the Western colonial rulers, when they ruled the continent, they separated. They said that, okay, this is the boundary, this is the boundary. That's all. That's how they have come into existence. And this boundary is always a point of friction. It is a flashpoint. And many a time the boundary disputes are the major issues of international relations. Say, for example, when you talk about India, its neighborhood. That's it. India and its neighborhood. With almost all the India and our neighboring countries, we have the issues. But one major issue that we have with them is boundary issues, boundary disputes, which are chronic in nature. And why they are chronic in nature depends upon the nature of the boundary. How that boundary evolved. Is it because it is a cultural boundary or it is because a physiographic boundary? For example, physiographic boundaries have their own problems. When very big, huge mountain ranges separate two countries, where do you locate the boundary? Earlier in the pre-modern history, you have the concept of a frontier. Have you heard this word frontier? Frontiers. What are the frontiers? Can you tell me any frontiers you are aware of? Northeast Frontier Agency, NEFA, and Northwest Frontier Province. During the colonial rule, British rule, most of the Eastern Indian, the Northeastern India is called as a Northeast Frontier Agency. And the present day Afghanistan was regarded as a Northwest Frontier Province. They are frontier regions. What do you mean by frontier regions? So here there is one country, one state is there. Here there is another state is there. In between these two states, there is some area which is there, which is an unexplored area. Which is an unexplored area, or area which is not known to us. We don't know what is there inside. We have not delineated it. We don't know. About those areas, our understanding is very poor. And many a time they are densely forested, or they are covered with rugged mountain ranges. So that is, the terrain is not suitable. Climate is not suitable. So normally we don't know much about them. Our understanding is little. Such areas are called as frontier areas. At that time, frontiers used to separate countries. It is not a line that separates one country from another country. One area is separating the country from another country. So you have the British imperial units on one side, right? And the Russian imperial units on the other side. Between these two empires, the concept of imperialism, two empires, Russian Empire and British Empire. Separating them, there is a frontier region. That's it. But now, after the Second World War, now do you have the concept of a frontier now? No. There is no unexplored area. There is no unknown area now. And these countries, they have come into the frontiers, and finally, a boundary is established. That's it. But when the boundary, how to, say for example, this frontier region is a mountainous territory. Where do you fix the boundary? That is a big question. See, mountain means it's not one small thing, isn't it? Look at, say, for example, you have the Himalayan ranges, which spans for 5,200 kilometers from east to west, and around 150 to 450 kilometers in the north-south direction. So where do you keep the boundary? That is always a big problem. Where to keep the boundary if there is a mountain that separates one country from another country? And similarly, rivers are also not small. Very big rivers are there. Huge rivers. Some of the river, they are spanning 5 to 10 kilometers width at some places. So where do you keep the boundary there? That is a problem. Right? This is what we call it as demarcation of a boundary. Boundary demarcation. So there are different stages in the boundary. So first you have to conceptualize a boundary. Where the boundary should be, concept is important. Then you have to delineate the boundary. You have to fix it on the map. Then you have to demarcate it on the ground. There are 3 stages of boundary evaluation. 3 stages of boundary evaluation. In the first stage, you fix a concept saying that, okay, between India and China, Himalayan ranges are the boundary. That is the concept. Then you have to delineate them. Once you conceptualize, next stage is delineate. Identify the boundary on the map. Second stage. Then third stage is, whatever you have identified on the map, you have to demarcate it on the ground. If the boundary is conceptualized, delineated, and finally demarcated, then that boundary is stable. It is less source of friction. It is bound to be stable in nature. But if the boundary is not demarcated, then there are bound to be issues. Say, for example, India and China. What is the big problem with India-China boundary? The boundaries, there are 3 stages are there in India-China boundary issue. In certain stages, conceptualization itself, there are differences. Where the boundary should be there in eastern, say for example, the eastern boundary in Arunachal Pradesh, there is a difference between India and China, where the boundary should be located. Whether it should be located at the high summits of the Himalayan ranges, or it should be located at the foot of the Himalayas. China says that it should be located at the foot of the Himalayas. We say that the boundary should be located on the other side of the Himalayas. So there is a conflict between us. So that problem is regarding the conceptualization itself. Then on the other hand, you take the things like the boundary in the western tier. Say in western, particularly in Uttarakhand, that is central sector you call it as. See, in fact, India and China, 3 sectors are there. Eastern sector, central sector and the western sector. Eastern sector, the problem is conceptualization. Central sector in Uttarakhand, the problem is demarcation. And you know where the boundary should be. It is already delineated on the map also, but demarcation is not done. That is the third problem. And coming to the Ladakh, the most crucial and the western sector, there the problem is delineation. Problem is delineation. That is. So if you take any boundary conflict, any boundary issue, the problems will be with respect to conceptualization, delineation or demarcation. If the problem is in the first stage itself, it's a bigger issue. It is a bigger issue. If it is at the third stage, somehow you can, at some point of time, you can arrive at some conclusion. So you should know what are the boundaries. Because all our international relations, don't think that international relations preparation, these things, etc., just knowing what is some meeting happened, some summit took place, so what happened in them, who told what, this, that, etc., some 2 pages going, and no, that is not the thing. You should have a greater understanding of the issues as a whole. Right? Because these issues are not the one which have come up now. Say, for example, you take the Palestinian and Israel issue. When we were writing civil service examination, we discussed the Palestine-Israel. And now in 2026 again, you are discussing. Even in 2046, when your children will come and write exam again, they will also prepare for Palestine-Israel issue. Don't worry. That is how the things are. These are not just now. So you should know their background, what is happening, what is the basic reason, cause, etc. Right? So these are all the things we are talking about. Then let us come back to the state. So now you know what is a state, what is a nation, what is a nation state, what is a boundary, what is a frontier, and what is their role in the international relations. Some basic elementary idea. Now let us come to the next important issue, the relationship between one state and another state. That is what you mean by international relations. So what is international relations? International relation is the relationship between one state and another state. That is international relations in a nutshell, simple. In a nutshell, international relation means the relationship between one state and another state. What do you mean by relationship between one state and another state? Earlier you are saying state means a geographical area. Now you are saying relationship between one geographical area and another geographical area. But be careful, states, countries are not only geographical areas. They are having resources, natural resources. And they are also inhabited by people, population. So this geographical area combined with its resources, economic resources and the population people will have, it forms one unit, a political unit, and it has its own relationship. And it is regarded as an entity. A state is regarded as an entity, an individual. Now you have the great concept in political geography called as Frederick Radjel. The Radjel's concept of organic theory of state. Frederick Radjel, a great thinker. He is the first one to introduce the concept of organic theory of state. What is this organic theory of state? So he suggests that a state is not a simple geographical area. A state is or a country. Now, whenever I use the word state, it means country, right? A state is basically organic in nature. What do you mean by organic? It is an organism. It is living in nature. So you take the world as a whole. World is basically made up of what? World is made up of living things, non-living things. Within the living things, we are part. Right? We are part of the living world, right? But there is a non-living element around us. Can you imagine a living world without a non-living world? No. Get it? Of course, the whole problem with the human being is he thinks that he is the only one who should live on the earth. Along with us, there is flora, fauna and microorganisms, and we are part of the fauna, that's all. So this flora, fauna, microorganism, that is a living one, right? Biosphere we call it as. And within it, there is an abiotic component in ecosystem, right? What is that abiotic component? Non-living in nature. That is made up of rocks. Made up of rocks or water or air or atmosphere. This rock, water, atmosphere, that is a non-living component. That is also very important. Why it is important for you? Why the non-living component is important? Can you live without the non-living component? Is biosphere feasible without the abiotic component? No. Why? Forget about others. Let us think about ours only, because human being is the most selfish creature on the earth, right? We always think of ourselves only, right? So in which way they are important? Because they provide the resources. So these rocks you are talking about, water you are talking about, atmosphere you are talking about, they provide us with the resources. And what do? We process these resources, utilize these resources, convert them into goods and services. That is what you mean by your economy. Can you imagine an economy without resources? No. I think in your economy classes you must be studying your primary, secondary, tertiary, right? But all the economy you are talking about, you require resources. And a very important resource is natural resources. The resources that are available here. What we do here as a Homo sapien species, the human being, now we are civilized in nature, right? We think that we are the master of all the creatures and we are the master of the world, earth as a whole, and we want to conquer the other parts of the cosmic space also, because we are in a position to process these resources, convert them into goods and services, right?